Good morning. We're here for the one-year Bible study. We're reading in the one-year Bible, the New Living Translation. And we're in Genesis chapter 44 and 45 and reading some rich historical text that will just speak volumes. The life of Joseph is such a powerful story in the Bible. There's just so much to it. And we're coming in on this magnificent Monday, right in the middle of the interaction between Joseph and his brothers who sold him for a slave. And he's sending them back yet again, telling them to fill their sacks with as much grain as they can carry. This is Genesis chapter 44. Verse 1, fill each of their sacks as much grain as they can and put each man's money back into his sack. Then put my personal silver cup at the top of the youngest brother's sack along with the money for his grain. So the manager did as Joseph instructed him. And so the husbands were up at dawn, and the brothers were up at dawn and were sent on their journey with their loaded donkeys. But when they'd gone only a short distance and were barely out of the city, Joseph told his manager to go back out and to stop him and to ask if this, why have you repaid my kindness with such evil? Why have you stolen my master's silver cup, which he uses to predict the future? What a wicked thing you've done. Thank you. Thank you. And so the brothers are just astounded. So here the brothers have done the most evil thing that they've ever done in their whole life by selling Joseph into slavery. And you remember most of the brothers, all of them but one, actually wanted him killed. They didn't want him to even be left alive. They wanted him killed. And instead they sold him for some silver and sold him into slavery. And here it is many years later. Joseph's been in prison. He's found favor while he was in prison. I mean, so much of this, wow. I mean, all of this will preach, I'm just saying. And then here he is now with his interactions back and forth with his brothers. And he sets them up one more time to show them, to give them a picture of what they had done. And if you caught on today, I want to read verse 5 again. Why have you stolen my master's silver cup, which he uses to predict the future? Joseph knew he was a man of God. He knew that he had been gifted in such a powerful way, even to the point that his foreman knew, he called him his palace manager, knew that he used that silver cup to predict the future with. And so anyway, they brought him back, and it's just such a touching story of mercy and grace. And of course, this is the type and shadow of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. When you read this, you're reading a type and shadow of the forgiveness and the mercy that is totally unmerited, totally not earned by any stretch of the imagination. These brothers had done nothing but evil to Joseph. And yet, throughout the story, too, you can also hear them talk about this evil that they did tracked them. Even all these years later, with no reason whatsoever to think that Joseph is ever alive, they had gathered together and in secret said, is this happening because of what we did to Joseph? That's what evil will do. When we make bad decisions, bad choices, it creates a stronghold in our mind, our will, and our emotions that lingers. It's called a stronghold. It's the opposite of God. And that stronghold was there, that they never let go of the fact that they had done evil. They had done wrong. Call it sin, call it wrongdoing, bad decisions. The Bible calls it sin. And there's no other way around it. It's sin. When you do wrong, then those things track you and they gnaw at you. And it creates a torment inside of you. And so Joseph, we get to read today about how Joseph brought him back, tried to be the tough guy with him for the longest time, but then he brought him in and made the best of the best meal for him, set him at the table, and then revealed to him who he was. And today starts the talk of Joseph telling them he knows who he is. Started with the silver cup and that he predicts the future. But in verse 3, of which will be chapter 33, what chapter? It has to be 40 something.
44.
40
or 45.
Okay, so it has to be
45,
3 is just right up there. 45, verse 3. I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. I am Joseph. He knew who he was. He knew that he was God's man. He knew that through these years he had God's favor. He had God's favor because he sought God. See, this didn't just happen that God just decided to pick out Joseph. He's put the same measure of faith in each one of us. And we all have the same opportunities. But Joseph knew who his father was, and he knew who he was, and he knew that he had been chosen to be the interpreter of dreams. Every time he was asked to come forward and interpret a dream, he told him, it's not me that interprets them, but my Father interprets them. It's God that interprets the dreams. He gave all the glory to God. He knew who he was. And he tells them, even in today's reading, that what you meant for evil, it was God that put me here. It was God who set my path straight, telling the brothers not to condemn themselves too much, because he knew that he was on the path that God wanted him to be on. There's power in that. There's power in that for us to forgive. When somebody's done us wrong, when we can look and we know, even if we can't see it today, that God's going to use this circumstance for good. But when we read stories like this, really and truly, who out there that's listening to me has ever had anybody do you so wrong as what they did to Joseph? And Joseph never stopped loving his brothers. He never stopped longing for his brothers. He never stopped believing in the dream that God had given him. He knew that he'd see his brothers again. He just didn't know when. But he knew that the evil that was being done to him in this present time, God was going to turn it for good. And when we can know that and we understand whose we are, see, it doesn't matter how you come against me. It doesn't matter how you lie against me. It doesn't matter how you don't support the decisions I make. It doesn't matter that you don't support how I run this business or how I run this ministry or how I run my household or what kind of a parent I am. It doesn't matter what other people think when you know who you are in Christ and who Christ is in you. You can stand firm. Joseph stood firm even at the cost of his own life. When he rejected Pilate's wife and the advances she made towards him, as far as he knew, it would cost him his life, that she'd have him killed. And he was willing unto death to stand for what he knew was right. And when we will stand and declare, I'm his, no weapon formed against me can prosper. You may lie about me. No weapon formed against me will prosper. You may manipulate the situation to get favor with the boss. No weapon formed against me will prosper. God will turn this for good. God will turn this for good. How much easier is it then to forgive? How can we hold against somebody what God's going to turn for good anyway? He's going to turn it for good. We can't hold that against him. And there's people in your life that you need to go back and you need to say, I forgive them, Father. And here's the deal. We think that we can do that. We can't do that. But the God in us does it for us. And he guides us. In fact, he'll direct your thoughts back. When I say there may be somebody that you need to forgive or that you're resenting or you're holding an offense to, it's not that you've got to remember it. It's that you bow your head immediately and say, Father, if there be anybody, bring it to my attention. Bring it to my consciousness that I know that I need to go through this act of forgiveness. And And he'll do that. And then you have to say, Lord, you've shown me what forgiveness looks like. See, we all use the definition of the world for forgiveness when the definition that the world uses is wrong. It's not the proper definition. God will show you how to release and how to forgive. And when we're releasing and we're forgiving, we're not condoning the actions. We're not saying what they did was right. We're not saying that what they did was okay. We're not saying that they shouldn't be stopped. We are saying that I no longer give them permission to have any poison in my life whatsoever. And forgiveness does not necessarily mean reestablishment of relationship. In fact, if it's something that's lingered with you for many, many, many years, chances are that it won't mean reestablishment of the relationship. You can have forgiveness and not have reestablishment of the relationship. Anyway, I could go on and on and on. These scriptures are so powerful, so powerful. But I think that Joseph's complete success, one of the most sought after historical figures in the Bible, the one that none of us minds getting in and reading about the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors, is because two things. First and foremost, Joseph sought God with all of his heart. And number two, he knew. He didn't just believe. He didn't just have faith. He knew who his God was. And he knew that he was God's man. It's his silver cup. It's his ability through Christ, through God, to predict the future. So Matthew 14 then starts right off verse 13. As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. No, that statement right there will preach. I definitely have spent some alone time in the last 9 days. Needed to spend some alone time in the last 9 days. Oftentimes, maybe we're forced into spending that alone time because we haven't done enough of it. But anyway, if Jesus Christ needed his alone time with God, how much more alone time do we need? Why do we need alone time? We need alone time to still the noise, to still the chaos, to turn the television off, turn the radio off, turn off the sounds of this world so that we can hear him, so that we hear our Father. And it rises up in us in the form of very tiny whispers. And he speaks to us, and he's speaking to us all the time. But because it's in the form of teeny tiny whispers speaking to us all the time, if we've got the noise of the world drowning it out, you're not going to hear him. But anyway, Jesus is the one that led them to the boat. And then there was many crowds there, and I love that it says that he had compassion on them. Now, who was in the crowds? There was all walks of life in the crowds. They had come from all over to hear Jesus. And he, in other words, what I'm saying is this is a picture of what he tells us over and over. He's no respecter of persons. And he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. I am healed by the stripes of Jesus Christ. He healed their sick. He didn't say he left some of them out, that he healed the ones that did this or followed this formula or read so much or prayed so much. He healed their sick. And then this is when the disciples came to him and told him the crowd was hungry. And Jesus said, and they said, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to go to the village and buy some food? And he said, well, that's not necessary. You feed them. And then he ends up feeding them from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And golly, there's just so much packed in that. I've heard so many different good messages. God has spoken to me directly about this particular story so many times. And these 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish came from a little boy that just brought his lunch that day. I mean, it was what he had in his hand, and it's what they had in their hand. Jesus said, you feed them. And the disciples said, with what? And he says, well, what do you have? Well, I've got 5 loaves and 2 fish, and there's millions of people here. And it was what you have in your hand. And what do you have in your hand? What do you have right now today in your hand? That's how God's going to bless you. It's what you have right now today is the way he blesses you. And Jesus came to bless us. Jesus came to end poverty, to end anything that's contrary to living in the kingdom of heaven. That's what Jesus came to do, and that's what he did for us. But immediately after he fed the 5,000, immediately after this, and that was just men only. That's the reason why I said there may have been millions. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted the disciples get back into the boat and cross the other side of the lake where he sent the people home. After he sent them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Now, he sent the disciples out on a boat. He sent them out on the boat. He went to be by himself to pray. Night fell, and he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from the land, for a strong wind had arisen. So once again, we read where Jesus put them in a boat, knowing Jesus already knew that strong wind was going to be there. He already knew that storm was going to kick itself up, and how they were fighting the heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, there's been several of us talk about 3 o'clock in the morning lately. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. They were in fear, and they cried out that it's a ghost. They thought it was a ghost. But Jesus spoke to them. In the middle of their storm, he spoke to them and said, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Take courage. I'm here. I don't know what storm you're going through right now, but these are words that Jesus is speaking directly to you. Take courage. I'm here." He's with you. He's never left you. I don't care how bad you've been. I don't care how many wrong decisions you've made. He never leaves you. He never forsakes you. He's here. Take courage. He's here. And then this is where Peter calls out to him and said, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." And Jesus said, "Yes, come." See, every one of these words is a love letter. This is God's written blessings written down for each one of us. It's his love letter. He's saying, "Yes, come." You know, you wouldn't be on this telecon with me today. You wouldn't be listening today, right now, this moment, if you weren't feeling the draw of God on your life. You know that you know you're called. He's saying, "Yes, come." And you're letting fear hold you back. You're afraid. You're afraid that, well, God may be mad at me because I haven't done right. I can't do that. I'm not educated enough. There's 1,001 reasons why you have fear. But he's saying to you, take courage, I'm here. And he's saying, yes, come. Yes, come. And these words ring for us true right where we're at every single day. January 22nd, 2018, your Father is saying to you, yes, come. I'm calling you. It's calling you by name. And then Proverbs 4:11 through 13. I will teach you wisdom's ways and lead you in straight paths. See, that's why I say when I'm his, he's directing my steps. I will teach you wisdom and lead you. This is what the Bible tells me. That the Bible promises me. It promises me that if I'm his, that it will be him that's leading me. When I make a business decision and everybody around me is going, you ever been in that position where you're making a decision and everybody's going, that's how we can stand sure that we know it's God, because of scriptures like this. I will teach you wisdom. Ways, I will teach you wisdom's ways and lead you in straight paths. It's not the way it seems. Things are seldom the way it seems. We do not live by sight. We live by faith. It's faith. Things may not look on the outside the way that God's called us to on the inside, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. He teaches us wisdom's ways. His wisdom's way is not and does not look the way the world's look. It doesn't. And he will lead you in straight paths. He'll make your crooked way straight. And all you have to be is 100%, 1,000% his. I'm his. I'm his. Do with me today what you want me to do. I can't get so caught up in my calendar and my schedule that I don't allow the Holy Spirit to alter my schedule today. That's not being his. That's not being his. Now, if I've heard him and I paused and I said, okay, Father, it's your wisdom that'll write this schedule for me, chances are he won't alter it because he doesn't change. But how many of us really go to that depth that we, on a day-by-day basis, hour by hour, minute by minute, say, okay, Lord, write down my schedule for the day. How many of us do that? And yet he's guiding us that way. He's not just guiding us minute by minute. He's guiding us second by second. When you walk, you won't be held back. When you run, you won't stumble. Boy, these are powerful promises. This right here, the Proverbs right here today, is enough. When you walk, you won't be held back. When you run, you won't stumble. Take hold of my instructions. Don't let them go. Take hold of my instructions. Don't let them go. Guard them, for they are the key to life. Thank y'all for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, David.